Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and it's finally time. The Skaven modders are starting to wake up. This is because they've been in a little bit of a stasis since Warhammer 2 to Warhammer 3. But here we are with one of the most important mods for the Skaven, at least in my opinion, because Clan Pestilens is the best clan for the Skaven. I played them religiously on the tabletop because I themed my armies around them, and it's a bit of a shame that Clan Pestilens does not really have a lot of attention in Warhammer 3. Hopefully in the future in the form of patches, but until then, the Pestilent Brotherhood mod is the one for you. So, this doesn't really affect Skrulk. It does in a way because you can get confederated and stuff, but let's jump into all the new stuff because there's a lot to talk about. So this mod adds in 4 new playable factions and a lot of other stuff, all themed around Clan Pestilens. So you remember the old school campaign which was centered around Lustria, where you had some unique Clan Pestilens stuff. It's something that I've talked about in a lot of videos in the past, and yeah, it's pretty cool theming. So let's just jump right in with the first legendary lord, which is the Plague Lord Nurglich. You can see he's got a pretty cool model. He's a big chunky boy, isn't he? But let's talk about the faction effects. So chance of plague spreading plus 100%. Diplomatic relations plus 60 with the factions of the Pestilent Brotherhood. That would be all the factions being added in this mod. Plague bolsters your forces and nurture your settlements. Construction cost minus 50% for Undercity Plague Cauldron buildings. Construction time minus 50% for Undercity Plague Cauldron buildings. Construction cost minus 50% for Pox Cauldron, Pestilent Nave, and Plague Bailey buildings. And finally, right cooldown minus 15 turns for the Pestilent Scheme. And then if we go into Lord effects, we got right cooldown minus 5 turns for the Pestilent Scheme. Yeah, it stacks. Corruption for Skaven plus 5 in local province, and finally passive ability Frenzy for Lord's Army. Yep, your whole army will have Frenzy. In terms of start position, you're starting in the southern points of Lustria, right next to Lord Skrulk, and after a few turns you'll actually get a quest to be able to confederate him too, so you're instantly going to be able to have him without too much of an issue. It only requires, I think it was fighting lizardmen around 10 times. It's not actually that long, to be honest. And yeah, you're surrounded here. You've got loads and loads of enemies. Keep in mind that this is going to be an aggressive campaign, but then again, whenever you play as a Skaven character, you're usually surrounded by enemies, so you should be used to it. So you've got a unique skill line, as you can expect, because you are a legendary lord, and you are pretty much a hybrid character. So you're a bit of melee, you're obviously focused on spellcasting. Pretty much anything centered around Clan Pestilens is going to be focused around the Law of Plague. But in general, you've got a lot of options to make your troops a lot stronger, ward save, weapon strength, and even missile resistance, so you're going to have the durable Clan Pestilens army. If you used to play them in 8th edition, then you remember how strong they were, because you had options like toughness 4 on your plague monks and stuff like that. You're pretty much getting that, which is always cool. And yeah, it's a cool theme, honestly. There's a lot to talk about when it comes to this mod, because there's so many things, and this is just barely scraping it. Our second legendary lord with another faction is Arch Pontifex Sich. And again, you can see a lot of faction effects and lord effects. Let's start off with the lord effects. So chance of plague spreading plus 100%. Diplomatic relations plus 30 with the factions of the Pestilent Brotherhood. Plagues bolster your forces and nurture your settlements. Construction cost minus 50% for breeding stock, pits of the Packmasters, force feeding chambers, and laboratory buildings. Right cooldown, minus 15 turns for the Pestilent Scheme. Upkeep, minus 25% for Mad Rat Ogres, Great Pox Rat, and Frothing Wolf Rat units for all armies. This is going to be quite good for you. And passive ability, Creeping Death for Mad Rat Ogres, Great Pox Rat, and Frothing Wolf Rats for all armies. Now if we go down to Lord effects, you can see we have a decent amount here. So the Pontifex will occasionally recruit a ritual plague priest to his side. Unlocks hero recruitment for Festering Chanter in all provinces. This is a new hero with extra recruitment capacity, and also you can see plus 3 hero recruit rank for faction wide. And finally hero recruit rank plus 2 for plague priest faction wide. Oh, and Skaven corruption plus 3 for local provinces. So you've already got a lot of bonuses here. This character will begin in the Southlands, pretty much where Teclis was, so you've got a pretty interesting start here, as you're going to be fighting against Teclis anyway. He's quite close. You're going to be dogpiled by a lot of Order factions, but the Skaven are generally strong enough, especially since you're able to ambush a decent amount, that you shouldn't really suffer too much. Or at least, well, that depends on how you plan up your buildings and pretty much everything else. And your unique skill line is actually quite interesting. So you'll start off with some diplomatic relations and in general start boosting up your post-battle loot and so on. What you will have is a rather interesting mechanic tied to this with a monstrous alliance or a Brotherhood of Pestilence. Here you can either decide to join up with Clan Naldor or join up with the Pestilent Brotherhood. It's all about kind of giving you an option. This clan kind of lies in the halfway point in a sense, which I think is actually quite interesting because it allows you to have a different style of play, plus, you know, thematic theming and so on. It's actually quite cool. I really, really like this. Our next legendary lord is Grizik Rot-Eye, and here we have the faction effects, again, quite a lot of them. So can recruit Plague Vermin as regular units. These kind of would act as your Storm Vermin essentially. Chance of Plague spreading plus 100%. Diplomatic relations plus 30 with the factions of the Pestilent Brotherhood. Plagues bolster your forces and nurture your settlements. Right cooldown minus 15 turns for Pestilent Scheme. Recruitment cost minus 75% for Postbag units or armies. Passive ability Befouling Essence for Postbag, Rotten Rodents and Plague Monk units in all armies. Passive ability Disgusting Demise for Postbag Rodents and Plague Monk units all armies. There's a lot of boosting up your forces here. And then finally passive ability Self-Destruction for Postbag, Rotten Rodents and Plague Monk units in all armies. And when it comes to Lord effects, you have the following effects. Passive ability Fanatical for all units in army. Passive ability Portents of Verminous Doom for Festering Chanter, Plague Priest and Stinking Thing characters, heroes in Lord's army, and passive ability Zealous Fervor for all units in army. So I'm not going over the abilities and stuff because there's a lot to go through. This is going to be a long video, and I want to let you discover some of these things because there's actually quite a bit. Anyways, when it comes down to the start position, you are in the top left-hand corner of the map fighting against, you know, Valkyria and obviously Malekith. Loads of different factions there, so it gives you a different bit of a flavor if you want to play with a Clan Pestilens theme, but you don't want to be in Lustria because you're kind of tired of the Lustria Ball. Well, this is something very, very different, and it's not as congested. Well, there's a lot of enemies, and you're going to have a bit of a different variety. Lots of chaos, clearly, but that's expected when you're so close to the Northern Chaos Wastes. And yeah, it's not bad, honestly. Pretty good area. When it comes to unique skill line, this character is mostly focused on buffs for units, mass, and all that type of stuff. Doing some damage, a vortex ability. It's clearly the more aggressive of the others. While the others can take the whole slow grow approach, this one is go out there and stab, stab, stab. Which obviously does work out quite well as, well, you're playing the Skaven, right? You kind of want to stab everything in sight. At least you should. Our third legendary faction is that of Poxtooth, Befouler of Sotek, and your faction effects are as follows. Chance of Plague spreading plus 100%, Diplomatic relations plus 20 with the faction of the Pestilent Brotherhood, Plagues bolster your forces and nurture your settlements, right cooldown minus 15 turns for the Pestilent Scheme, passive ability Corrupted Mind for all Pestilent Brotherhood units, all armies, passive ability Leeching Decay for Plague Pontifex and Plague Priest characters, all armies. Passive ability Horned Rat's Pox for Plague Pontifex, Plague Priest and Festering Chanter characters, all armies. And finally, passive ability Horned Rat Witness Mimi for Postbag, Rotten Rodents and Plague Monk units for all armies. Now, you do have some Lord effects too, and these ones are quite interesting. So, gain following for each active war on a Lizardmen faction. Winds of Magic Power Reserve plus 3 per turn, all armies. Melee attack plus 1, all armies faction wide. Yeah, this is going to be quite strong. And gain for 3 turns after declaring a war on a Lizardmen faction. Attribute Mastery of the Elemental Winds for Festering Chanters, Plague Priests, and Plague Pontifexes, all armies. Replenishment rate plus 15% for all units. Charge bonus plus 8 for all units. Ward save for Plague Priests, Festering Chanters, Plague Monks, Rotten Rodents, and Postbag units. So yeah, you can get quite a little bit of a bonus there. This is for the Lord's army, but you want to be able to kill off all the lizardmen around. I mean, you've got to keep into account that he's wearing skink feathers. When it comes to start position, you are in the southernmost tip of Lustria, meaning that you're going to be fighting against the High Elves there, you're going to be dealing with Tehenowin, you've got your allies to the north, and really what I would suggest is download Recruit Defeated Legendary Lords mod, just to have a little bit of extra help, because eventually you're going to have to kill off your own allies and want to be able to recruit them. But yeah, it's a pretty good start. You do have some demons in the south to deal with, and obviously Oxyotl is going to be a bit of an issue, but if you can take him out quickly, it does make your campaign run a lot smoother. The unique skill line is quite interesting. Obviously, there's a bit focus on being able to damage the lizardmen, making them weaker and stuff, which is kind of cool. There's a big focus on getting rid of the lizardmen here, so your campaign, if you decide to play as him, would be taking over Lustria essentially and then going to the Southlands. If you want to go for a roleplay sense, yeah, I quite like the character. It's pretty different, and the idea is, you know, we do need another Skaven versus lizardmen thing. It's mostly because Clan Pestilens really needs to be upgraded. Like, seriously, if anyone CA is watching here. But that's not all, there's a lot more legendary characters, because if you go into your technology tab and go to the very far right, you can see there are 6 more legendary lords. Yeah, these are more like pseudo-legendary lords, but pretty cool ones. They've all got their effects and so on. They'll cost a lot of food to get, and they do take a few turns. Obviously, you're not going to be able to get these very early on, but they can be useful, and it adds into a little bit more flavor. This is basically just going for the whole Pestilent Council thing, which is freaking cool. But yeah, now we have to talk about more stuff before we get into those. So, if you play as one of these factions, remember not as Skrulk right now, you've got a bit of a roster change, which we're going to get into the roster specifics later. Essentially, it's replacing your basic stuff like your Clan Rats and your Storm Vermin, and you're going to be focusing on a Clan Pestilens theme, which is pretty interesting. It's definitely focused on this Lustria campaign from many, many, many years ago, which is actually kind of nice because it was a fun campaign, but it's more to diversify the Skaven a little bit, and I think that works out quite well, especially since, well, you know, you want to be able to just have a little bit of fun. But, yeah, let's jump right into the other stuff. We're going to talk about the generic lords first, the first one being the Plague Pontifex. And an important thing to note here is like 2 of these factions, 2 of these legendary factions, are also available in the Realm of Chaos map in case you want a smaller campaign, you just want to chill and all that type of stuff. But yeah, the Plague Pontifex itself is a spellcaster, it's a melee hybrid, going to be very similar to the Plague Priest, but think of this as a Plague Priest which is, you know, in a Lord option, which is weird that we still don't have this in vanilla, really, because every other major Skaven clan got the attention, barring my good green boys. But yeah, it's got a little bit of a hybrid feel, it's got some nice skill lines and so on. The idea is Plague Priest but in melee as a Lord, and that works out quite well, doesn't really need that much explaining. You do have another generic Lord option, which is the Plague Lord, and this is your melee-based Lord, just in case you want to have, you know, like a Chieftain or a Warlord, just to be able to have something. I myself prefer spellcaster-led armies, but I know some people like different types of characters, especially having the variety is always the best thing, right? Just having the option is better than not having it. Anyways, let's talk about the pseudo-legendary lords. So they don't have unique skill lines, but they do have unique traits. All of them do. So this is the first one, the Archdeacon, well, the first one that I recruited, and its effects are as following. So chance of plague spreading plus 100%. It's a Lord, so it'll get wounded. Control -2 for all provinces, this is your own thing. Skaven Corruption +3 for local province. Character Aura Leadership Effect +5. Leadership Aura Size +20%. Immune to Psychology, Ability Plague, and the whole army is considered expendable. This is the next one, which is the Spreader of the Word, and again, no unique skills, but you do have a lot of bonuses. So Diplomatic Relations +20 with the factions of the Pestilent Brotherhood. Control +5 faction-wide, very, very useful. Casualty replenishment rate +5% when in foreign territory. Income from trade tariffs +10% faction-wide. Tradable resources produced +10% faction-wide. Global recruitment duration -1 turn for all units in Lord's army. And finally, leadership +8 when in foreign territory, Lord's army. You can already see that there's a lot coming on. We're going to move on to the next one already because we're on a roll. This is the Ravener, and the bonuses are as follows. Armor +20. Recruit rank +4 for Plague Monks and Plague Claw Catapult units, Lord's Army. Weapon strength +10%. Charge bonus +16. Ability Rampage. Attribute causes terror. And finally, Mad as a Ratter as an ability. So you've got a lot going here. and it just keeps coming and just keeps coming and just keeps coming. Alright, so we got the other pseudo-legendary lord, which has the following benefits: magic item drop chance plus 25%, hit points plus 15%, income from post-battle loot plus 20%. You want this guy up front, that's for sure. Income from raiding plus 20% Lord's Army, speed minus 15%, he's a slow boy, and finally, passive ability regeneration. And finally, we have the hidden. I think that is finally though, because there's a lot of characters to go through here. Anyways, the following effects are granted. So, chance of plague spreading plus 100%. Diplomatic relations minus 20 with all factions. Control minus 5 with all provinces. Enemy casualty replenishment rate minus 20% in enemy armies and local province. Casualty replenishment rate plus 30% for Lord's Army. Control minus 8 for local enemy provinces. And finally, Skaven corruption plus 5 for local province. You've got a lot of effects here, and more are to come. Now, this character does have a few unique skills, which you can see. It can actually increase your research rate plus 30% for faction-wide. You do want him, you do get the negative of minus 5 control, but if you get him to the point where you're already expanding and you've already got a decent amount of control on your areas, you should not be suffering too much. Yeah, there's benefits, but there's negatives, and I think that works well for the Skaven, because, yeah, you know, Skaven faction. But yeah, overall, all these legendary characters, even the pseudo ones, are quite useful, and it gives you so much to play with. Let's just continue on, because there's a little bit more. Yes, this is going to be quite a long video, I think. So you do have some generic heroes coming into effect, and the first one being the Festering Chanter. This one is very much focused on being an administrative hero. It's able to cast a few spells, and it's not going to be the whole lore. It's going to do decent melee damage too, but the idea is this character's there to help with your local provinces, to get more growth, some bonuses all around. This is a support hero, and we actually do need some more support heroes, so I kind of like the idea of it. I'm a big fan of this. At the end of the day, what we want is more of variety, especially for the Skaven, which are one of the most varied factions throughout Warhammer Fantasy. And then the next hero itself is the Striking Thing. This one is a melee-based hero. You've got some decent type of, leadership buffs and stuff. Think of it like a chieftain, but just Clan Pestilens themed, and I think that works out quite well. At the end of the day is, yeah, you've got variety and you can tailor your armies. This is a big thing when you start looking towards the roster itself, because the roster is, as you can imagine, they're very much the same, but it's absolutely massive with this. I mean, the Skaven need a lot of units. The Skaven are one of those factions which just need to have loads and loads and loads of ones. The units with the black and white unit cards are basically the new ones, and that gives you a lot to play with. So yeah, we're going to start looking at the units themselves, because there's been a lot that we've talked about campaign-wise, but we need to talk about the rosters too. Your pos bags will replace your Skaven slaves, however they will also have a very good effect there that will reduce enemy melee attack in the area, so they'll act as a really good buffer in all honesty. They're still going to be fairly crap, let's be honest, their stats are just not good, but they're expendable, and that's the main thing here. You want the army... You want these to kind of hold down and just debuff your enemies if you're using them. It obviously depends on your type of playstyle, whether you're using them or not, and the different types. I mean, there is a second variant with flails, which are quite good. I quite like them. Nothing too much to talk about there, because it does a bit more damage, but that's literally the main thing about that. There's a third variant with slings too, which is the same thing. The good thing is, you can use them and then throw your other units to die should you so need to. There's just basically slaves, just with a different name and a better effect. It just depends on what you want to use them for, really. This is where things get a little bit more interesting with the Rotten Rodents, because they're basically your replacement for clan rats, but there's two different variants, right? The standard one is just sword, it's your most basic one, and it's there to do a decent amount of damage. The stats aren't too bad, it's fairly durable, I mean it's still a clan rat, but the second variant is where things get a little bit better, because they've got additional hand weapons, and believe it or not, I've been praying to the Horned Rat, hoping that in Old World we'll get some variant like this, because clan rats with additional hand weapons would be freaking cool. It'd just be really nice to have, because we know that it's possible in lore, just we never had them on the tabletop. So yeah, this works out quite well. It's actually fairly fun, and that's the most important thing. Variety and cool stuff. Frothing wolf rats are the same as normal wolf rats, just a little bit different. You'll have access to magical attacks at the very beginning because, rabies and stuff. Yeah, like if you're used to using wolf rats, you've got access to them here. very much the same, and that works out okay. It's the most common thing, I'd say. I kind of used them a lot in the armies when I played yesterday. It's quite different, but it very much depends on your actual playstyle more than anything else. Then you've got access to the Great Pox Rat. Okay, so this one's pretty interesting because this is actually a mount option on the tabletop. It's obviously supposed to be a lot smaller, but, you know, it's a bit weird. So I think it works well as having the same size as a Brood Horror. Same kind of purpose, in all honesty. But, yeah, you know, it's thematic with Clan Pestilens. I'm really pissed off that Games Workshop actually got rid of the ability to buy that model. It was actually just with Nurglich, but it was used in 8th edition too. It's just a massive shame. Mad Rat Ogres are very much used in the same way as normal Rat Ogres. You can see the effects down there. The idea is just kind of replacing stuff that you already have with more thematic stuff in your army. Which, yeah, I mean, works perfectly fine for me. At the end of the day, really, if we had a few things like, you know, rat swarms and stuff, that would be kind of cool. But I think the technology is just not there just yet, considering that, well, we have a swarm unit now with the Nurglings, but I imagine it must not be easy to actually sort out like normally. And finally, rat spawns. So these are like Chaos Spawn. Well, it's using the Chaos Spawn model, but it's not unbreakable. This is still a heavy shock troop, so you've got access to a pretty strong shock trooper, just in case you want to have them in your army. I've mostly been going with loads of like clan rats, well, rotten rodents better, and mixing with spellcasters. But again, having variety is the most important thing, I'd say. The best thing about this is you have access to a lot of mounts. Mostly the Plague Cauldron itself is just absolutely phenomenal. I love the look of everything that we've seen. Like, I'm such a big fan of Clan Pestilens. I know a lot of people prefer Scryer and stuff, but this was my clan on the tabletop. This was my favorite. And like I've said many, many times, Creative Assembly have kind of neglected Clan Pestilens. So seeing a mod just bring in a big push to it, yes, it's not affecting Skrulk directly, but it's bringing Nurglich, which is the leader of the actual clan. He's the actual Arch Plague Lord. So here we have a battle versus the Lizardmen because, you know, thematic and so on, where I used, I had to make up my own army because obviously randomly generated isn't really going to focus a lot on modded units. But I did have a randomly generated Lizardman army. We're very much equal. It's a bit of a shame that I can't like bring in a lot of units compared to them, but you know, custom battle balancing and all that type of malarkey. Either way, I would say it went out quite well. Very even, very close match. I must admit I was wrong about the Mad Rat Ogres. They're actually very good. They've got a pretty good debuff on the enemy. I think that just stems back to my hatred of Rat Ogres on the tabletop. So I'm gonna leave the original voice sign and have this here as a learning moment, you know? Because I do learn, and I'm still not going to like Rat Ogres even if they're better, but hey, you know, PTSD from the tabletop does also creep up here sometimes. Anyways, regarding the mod, this is exactly what I wanted from a Skaven mod. I hope that eventually they do port in some of the stuff, or at least all the stuff, to Skrulk, because it would be nice if Skrulk had access to all this stuff too. Don't know if that's planned in the future, but these are great modders. These are very talented people that have worked on this product, and it shows. This mod is literally bringing back an old campaign from the tabletop, and that's freaking awesome. That is honestly freaking awesome. The modders involved here are Stratovarius, Karma, Pontiff, Finn, 20KR, Hycruel. These are all people that you guys know very, very well. And yeah, it shows that their quality is just freaking good. Like, the quality is definitely there. So I'm going to let the rest of the battle play out. If you want to try out the mod, it'll be linked in the description below. And you should. If you want another reason to play as Skaven campaign, which, why would you need a reason anyway? It's here, and this is definitely the one that you're going to want to play. So give it a try. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion. I know some people are going, oh, you know, Skaven mod, Skaven fatigue. It's like, yeah, but like, let's be honest. Like, Clan Pestilens was ignored. Let them have their time in the sunshine, and then you can complain about Skaven fatigue. Anyways, with all that being said, have a lovely day. I shall see you all again very, very soon.
Black Death! Council's command! Scupper! kill! Back on the ground! Scurry race! Flame, flame! Onward! Boxers! We obey! Move! Master of masters! Plague Lord! Move, move! Good, now kill! What orders? Now, yes! The plague monks! Scapa, go! Sense. Murder, kill, kill! I am Skrulk! Yes, now, now! This way, fool! Retreat, retreat! Clan advance! Suffer the clean! Stunt the scurry! Fight them! Ready? Ready? Good master! Plague monks! Scupper, go! Plague monks! Counselor's command! Scuttle away! It's not just hold one. Slingers! Yes, yes! Tremble before Skrulk! Rakitatus! Shameful display! Retreat, retreat! Yes, yes, brethren! Run, chase! For the burning tide! Yes, yes, yes! Find Zeke! At once, master! Slingers! Pops, elders! Come, brothers! Greet Adaka! Scurry race! Plague monks! Just fight! Kill! Just kill! Slingers! Clan chieftain! Plague monks to me! Kill heathens! I am Skrulk! This way, fool! Slay no fast! Scarpa, go! Infect! Kill! slingers! Make dead dead!
Our tail's yours! Fight! Fight!
Horned rat's blessing! Lord Skralk!
Retreat! Retreat!
Clan Obey follows me! Fools for clan rats! Die! Die!
Fox elders!
Suffer the clean!
A-claw catapult! Quick, quick!
Scamper scurry!
Council's command!
Lord Skralk!